You're ready to begin your heel when you have about 7 inches knitted of the cuff of your sock. Now, make sure that you're in ready position when you start to do the heel. Make sure that you haven't done like one sock and then decide to start right here. It'll get all messed up. So make sure that your knitting looks something like this. And we're going to begin what's called a heel flap. And for this section only, we're going to be working on this one sock, and we're just going to be knitting back and forth like this, turning our work at the end of every row and not going in the round, just for now, to make a flap, like a rectangle like this, just on one side. And that's going to be the part that goes over the heel. So when we knit the flap, here's how to keep track of how many rows that you've done. We'll start knitting the flap here, and after a few stitches, take a marker and put it around an entire stitch in that row that you've just knitted. Like that. This is going to be row number 1, and you can see that the marker is around the stitch that's actually on the needle. And if you want to, you can push the cable through like that. That way it's a lot easier. That's what you want to see. It's going to make it a lot easier to count how many rows you've done later. So depending on which size you're doing, you're going to need to do a different number of rows. But one thing that's important is that you slip the first stitch at the beginning of every row. And I'll show you what that looks like. We'll knit across this half of the sock one time, when you come to the end of the row, do your last stitches, and instead of going to your other sock like you're used to, just let it hang down there for now. Turn your knitting around like that, and now we're going to be purling. We're still working in stockinette stitch, which means when the wrong side is facing, we're going to be purling, and you can see those purl bumps there, so you know what you need to do when this side is facing you. Slipping the first stitch is so easy. Just pass the first stitch from one needle to the next like that without purling it. With the yarn in front, because we're purling, go ahead and purl back across the entire row, just like that. And depending on your pattern, you may need to do that for 20 or 24 rows or maybe 26 rows. And I'll show you what that looks like when we're done so that you will know that you've counted your rows right. Alright, I've knitted 24 rows of my heel flap, and I've slipped this first stitch of every row, which leaves this nice row of elongated stitches like that along the edge of the heel flap. The way that you know that if you've knitted enough rows is just to look at this marker and count the V's up from this marker. So this right here, that's row number 1. So you just count up from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I have to stop and readjust, just put your needle in there like that. I like to count with something sharp like a needle. Like that. And then keep going like that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop and readjust. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oops, need to readjust, so I'm just going to put my needle in there. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. We always count the row of stitches that's on the needle.